We've got a little something to do at the end of the presentation, so take it away, Kieren.
Hi everyone, how's the volume in the back? Good? Perfect. So I'm between everyone and happy hour, so it may not take the full half hour to see how it goes, but thanks everyone for having me. Thanks John for having me back 2 years in a row. It's been great working with you over email, in person recently, and et cetera over this 1 year period. I guess 1 year is like maybe 5 to 10 years. And, 1 year in blockchain is like 5 to 10 otherwise. So it feels like it's been a long time. So first talk, I want to cover a little bit on first principle stuff. So I think what I saw through the day was pretty in-depth, mostly kind of business-focused discussions, and hopefully not too much on, if you are looking like where to actually apply the technology. So I want to talk for a couple minutes about that, and then spend the rest of the time on what BlockApps is actually doing, has done recently, and if that potentially fields some questions. So with that said, so, and again, kind of big distinction, which I think pretty much everyone in the room is familiar with, but bears repeating in certain cases. There are two big use cases for the technology. By and large, whenever you're applying blockchain, you are exchanging some kind of potentially scarce digital asset. So this could be a representation of currency, this could be representation of a physical item, it could be, it's been healthcare heavy today, it could be patient data, that sort of thing. Anything that actually changes hands and you need to sort of ensure that that transfer happens secure, kind of fits the blockchain paradigm well. So previous technologies like databases, et cetera, you had to layer a lot onto them to ensure that handing something to someone was like it is when you hand someone cash or an item today. So blockchains do that natively, and we're still kind of figuring out the implications of this on how our IT systems would support all of our business interactions will change. But yes, so there's the blockchain crowd, which we love and support, but are not all that involved in, but are inspired by. We're very much in the enterprise side of the house. As John mentioned, helped to found the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, one of the really early players pushing the idea that this technology is not just for currency and programmable uses of currency, all that sort of thing, but can be used by enterprise to essentially streamline business operations and unlock more value. So there's us, there's on the founding board of the EA, Hyperledger, those sort of folks are where we see ourselves. So blockchain technology itself, it is an interesting kind of mix of technologies. It is a database and a data store. It's also a network. I mean, the technology works best when deployed with potentially a large number of parties who are interacting with each other on the same ledger. And this is kind of a major rethinking of how IT systems have been defined in over the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years. That's kind of the big change that blockchain represents. Of course, it's verifiable, so if you're transferring value, right, you want to be absolutely sure that that transfer happened, that that's appropriately irrefutable and visible to all parties. And so, in comparison with the database, that's kind of the big value problem that it has. So, this is the business problem in the abstract sense that we usually deal with. So, CO2 enterprises, and they're interacting with each other. So, this could be a supply chain scenario. So, think Walmart purchasing something from one of its many vendors. It could be like a payment scenario. So, two banks are paying each other, or doing a securities exchange, and that goes through clearinghouse, et cetera. There are two ways that people deal with this. One, they integrate with each other directly. So that's the left side here. And so what you have there is kind of an explosion of connections between enterprises and a lot of individual IT effort at each. So if you integrate one at a time, you never quite know whose data is correct, and it's just very expensive. So from an IT perspective, this side costs a lot and creates a lot of pain in terms of reconciling between the authoritative data stores that the enterprise has. So the solution we've come up with is to create an intermediary. And this intermediary has the function of kind of creating standardization and serving as kind of the tie break. So if company A's database says, X and company B's says Y, the intermediary decides basically who's correct. And this works really well. Like, it's efficient, it solves this complicated kind of communication problem. But the problem is then that intermediary may serve as a technology bottleneck or capture disproportionate value. So I'm not a intermediaries or evil guy. I just have noticed that if you have to work with the intermediary, you really have to conform to their picture of the world. And they may just not want to work on the time scale that you want to work, where you're trying to push innovation, they kind of are doing well sort of no matter what you do. And so it really slows the pace of innovation dealing with these folks who are not necessarily incentivized to make any sort of change. So blockchain represents sort of a best of both worlds scenario in which you have kind of the flexibility of going point to point. If I integrate with you, I can just do it. I don't have to ask permission from the clearinghouse. But you have the benefit that it ends up being a standard solution. So you can reuse the effort from enterprise A integrating to enterprise B with the integration with enterprise C. So it kind of solves this big kind of coordination and communication problem that enterprises have when they're trying to do transactions with each other. And so this is the main use case that we see for enterprise blockchain and kind of what we serve. So how do you identify a good use case? Right? So 4 criteria that we tend to, when we're looking at partnering or business development and someone kind of tells us what their use case is, we look for roughly these 4 criteria. So is there a need to actually share data within multiple parties? So if it's just a single enterprise and a high level of trust, probably a blockchain solution is overkill, right? They can probably get away with one single database that they all have access to. Not always, but most of the time. Once you have 2, 3, 5, 1,000 enterprises, they're not comfortable allowing each other access to their internal IT systems. But nevertheless, want those systems to sort of behave the same way. So, if there's a need to share data and make sure that that data is accurate, kind of point 3 here, between multiple parties, that's a good place to look. So, number 2 also, so if you're in a situation where letting another party have and kind of timestamp and audit and be the authority over the other data creates a competitive disadvantage for you or just great inconvenience or cost, it's another situation where you want to actually look for blockchain technology. And the 4th point, so greenfield is so much easier in a lot of ways than a legacy replacement. No one wants to throw any of their legacy investments away. So our approach has always been to either integrate with the legacy or focus on a use case that doesn't require touching the legacy. Many big enterprises are investing in technology. We think that, and more importantly, the analysts think blockchain spending on the enterprise side will hit about $3 billion this year. So, then we want to throw out a quick question on the general blockchain primer. Maybe you got some of this earlier in the day, but I hope it was useful for the group before I go into what BlockApps does. No questions. Okay, perfect. Just keep going. Okay, so on to the BlockApps specific part of the presentation. So we call ourselves the platform for business networks, and sometimes blockchain's in the tagline, sometimes not, but we think blockchain is a means to solve a problem that's existed for a long time, and is not necessarily kind of our primary goal as a community. The big problem is how can businesses integrate with each other, transact, work together more seamlessly, and blockchain happens to be sort of the best solution for that. So as a matter of purpose, I think our goal is to just streamline the world's ability to transact and collaborate and work with other parties who, in the past might have had a hard time working together. So we are the blockchain as a service category creator. Nevertheless, that kicked off with Microsoft at the end of 2015, partnered with all the major cloud companies, of course, we're a member and board member of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and we have some nice logos. So a little bit on the timeline, been around since, we're incubated by Consensus, been around since early 2015, so before the launch of Ethereum, which is the main protocol we base ourselves on. Probably been around since longer than most of the people in the room, though I suspect not all. Someone here definitely has been around longer. So kind of 2015 to 2016, really building the product, landing those initial partnerships, especially with Microsoft, that helped sort of create the enterprise blockchain market. Spun out independently kind of early in 2016. Continued to partner with Consensus throughout, but got the first production application for our Fortune 500 with PHP built in at that time. That kind of led to, as we were announcing that at DEF CON in Shanghai, that led to a discussion which ended up creating the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. Basically, vendors like us were working above and beyond the core Ethereum protocol to solve for the last mile of enterprise needs. And we thought we needed a standards body to kind of work together, ensure that there's no vendor lock-in, basically as we push sort of the adoption of Ethereum in the enterprise and a little bit in counterpoint to some of the other big technology players. We're more of a standards-based, community-focused sort of group of people. So that idea was launched in a Starbucks in Shanghai in late 2016, and we made the big announcement in early 2017 with EEA. Kind of continued to expand our go-to-market at that time, worked with lots of big enterprises, some of which I'll tell you about. Went on to partner with Google and Amazon through 2018, and also launched our partner network in 2018. Our head of partnerships is in the room, it's Mark. So if you haven't chatted with Mark, feel free. But it's been kind of a long road, and it's been great to watch the market mature and service our customers through these years. Some more recent events. We just closed our Series A. So.
Nice. Good job. Yeah, good job. Excellent.
For those who have not raised financing, I would say if you can avoid it, avoid it. It's hard work. Lots of documents, lawyers. So this is fantastic. We've started to, and kind of relevant to this conference as a whole, I've seen pretty good energy theme and a heavy healthcare theme. So we actually started to hire kind of business development directors for those key sectors. We may add one or two more, which we haven't announced yet, but are starting to really focus on subsegments of customers who we're seeing have a lot to gain from blockchain technology and kind of a common set of needs. And we've gone on to partner with some large system integrators, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. Tech Mahindra, very large company in the Mahindra group, and also Alton, and we're actually working on a clinical trials project with Alton, which I'll
Nice.
a little bit more detail on shortly. So, just reiterating again, kind of, let's think again about the problem we're solving. It's kind of, we are trying to make the way businesses do business with each other much more efficient. And the deficiency we see is in a couple key categories. So once you've got a network of businesses transacting with each other, can you actually add new functionality to that? To my point from before, if there's a clearinghouse, very hard. If there isn't, and you integrate kind of on a point-to-point basis, then people need to coordinate to update their IT systems together, never be. So the upshot is that you get really old systems and it becomes very expensive to change them over time. And so standardization also, I've heard a bunch today. One approach to standardization is kind of by committee. So, there are groups like IEEE, NIST, et cetera, who set standards and everyone has to adhere to those standards and, hopefully things work out well. What blockchain technology generally offers is the opportunity to sort of standardize by default. Once you've created something, since we're all on the same ledger, everyone gets the data by default, and so there's less of a need for committee work to set standards. Rather, you can kind of just do it, and other enterprises in your network can benefit from what you define as a standard. And so in the non-blockchain world, the reconciliation of data, the aggregation so that people find systems useful can create, again, very powerful platforms and intermediaries that we see capture a lot of transaction value. So I'll come back to that point a little bit later. Product-wise, so we create a platform. It's called BlockApps Strata. And what it does is, as I kind of said before, based on Ethereum, but extends it in two really big categories. So how do you meet the needs of enterprise customers? So this is performance, privacy, scalability, the ability to operate easily, and also how do you make it easy to quickly build, integrate, and run applications on top of that platform without having to throw away any legacy systems, et cetera. So accomplish this with a couple key features, privacy being maybe the most important. This is the question of if you're all on one trading ledger, can you see the transactions that your competitor is doing with one of their suppliers and the price, that sort of thing. So no enterprise will sign up for that. So the big problem we've solved is creating a granularity so that you kind of reveal the data on a need-to-know basis to people who you are trading with, but still have the audit trail, the assurance that the blockchain is giving you kind of guarantees, again, data integrity, and that the business rules of the system are assured. So privacy is extremely important in enterprise implementations of technology. Governance also. So most of the blockchain networks out there are not being 100% designed up front. Rather, you start with a small number of parties and then add more parties later. And then there's actual almost like a governing board aspect of rules on who can be involved, who has what rights, et cetera, who can see which data. That our approach has been to actually just program it to the blockchain itself. So we have a pretty flexible approach as far as the evolving ongoing governance of the system. So again, you don't get into a gridlock of discussions and committee work, et cetera. You can just kind of launch and then figure it out as you go. Run on most major clouds, start with Microsoft, partner with all the big ones, et cetera. So actually, identity management is worth talking about before I move on. So there's a lot of talk of identity in the blockchain world as far as self-sovereign identity, and there's a lot of kind of developing world use cases for it, also financial and even government use cases where you're trying to figure out who a person is and correlate all the representations of that person. Like, for me, I have maybe 2 different bank accounts. There's my insurance provider. There's my college diploma. How do you piece together my history, right, with a bunch of different parties that won't necessarily collaborate and share the data, et cetera. So, thinking through that idea, there's also the need to integrate with legacy identity mechanisms. So, Facebook, Google have done a really good job at making it super easy to sign into any website with your Google and Facebook credentials. And so, that kind of UX, consumer expectation, is something that we actually have to bring into the blockchain world as well, so that people will ultimately not adopt the technology if it isn't just as easy or easier as what it is today. So what we've done is build a bridge where you can manage your blockchain identities with traditional authentication mechanisms like Google, but also enterprise single sign-on like Azure and Active Directory, et cetera. So this is a big point in the overall adoption path that we support. How am I doing on time?
You're good.
You're good?
Yep, I'm good. Keep going, Kieren.
I talked about this at the way. So, in any case, granular privacy. Governance model, again, there's sort of, it's a smart contracts-based governance whereby you can actively program the chain to enforce rules on who's allowed to be in the chain, who's allowed to see certain data, you can actually vote people out, all that sort of thing, that we support. And we've seen is totally essential when you are, one, standing up a blockchain business network and then adding to it. And I did talk about identity. All right. Just a little bit more on the product. So we see ourselves in a couple layers in the value chain, if you will. So there's the just communication messaging. So how do you get your enterprise system to talk to my enterprise system, or your people to talk to my people, et cetera. And then the transactional aspects are in smart contracts, primarily Ethereum solidity based, although we've actually optimized in certain cases for greater throughput, the ability to handle more data, et cetera. So we spoke both the EVM and a variant called Solid VM, which supports Solidity very directly and has a nice interpreter for it, which also creates great performance. If anyone technical wants to talk about that, we can. A lot of our values in the middleware layer as well. So it's not enough to have a blockchain. You've got to connect it to everything the world was doing before blockchain. So have great APIs to support this, et cetera. And as you can see kind of above here, we have a pretty heavy partner-driven model. So the boxes that are not filled in are kind of third party. And so we work with a good number of companies to actually deploy solutions on top of the Strava platform to kind of industry and customers, as you can see up there. Technical architecture slide. If anyone's interested, we can talk about this after. So I mentioned the partner network before. So we are up to, how many partners do you think we have? 30 some partners covering 40 countries. And we found that blockchain has to sort of be done together. So you can't solve all the problems yourself. We solve the platform and the middleware layer. We're not, I'll go into a couple examples, but we're not providing end solutions for financial services. Or, it takes so much effort to really understand what those industries need and how to approach the parties to get them actually all involved in the same network, et cetera. We are primarily working with partners and always looking for more, kind of in the vertical sort of solution layer. So as you can see, pretty good mix of industries, pretty good mix of solutions that our partners cover. And so a lot of them have built just off-the-shelf solutions on top of our platform, but we're always looking for more. And so it tends to be a really good partnership as far as us taking care of one big layer of things that the partner doesn't have to think about, and then being able to really tailor for a specific industry need that we can support, but don't have to become expert in every single thing. So that's a lot of our model, if anyone wants to talk more about it afterwards. So do a couple of use cases and then wrap up. So last year at this conference, I talked about a mysterious agriculture company that at the time I couldn't name. We've gone and announced it is Bayer Crop Science. And they have essentially a supply chain integrity and traceability use case. So they manufacture seed. A lot of the seed is high value in that it's identity preserved, and so not necessarily a commodity product. And they need to be able to prove what it is, both to end consumers, but also sometimes regulators, long after harvest, actually. So they need to be able to trace it through bushel, through potential processing, and one of the big commodity firms turns around and sells it, commodity firms like Cargo, Bungie, et cetera. So they need to be able to actually track that whole value chain, both to preserve the pricing at point of sale of the product, but also sometimes for regulatory reasons. And so it's pretty interesting in that what this means is that to track the inventory, you've got to integrate the IT systems that many different folks have, including the actual grower. But the way agriculture works is big input manufacturer companies like Bayer Crop Science, they don't sell things directly to farmers, for instance. they mostly go through distributors like farming co-ops, et cetera. And so there becomes a real challenge in integrating all these systems, which we've helped them resolve with blockchain technology. So, the big outcome is that there is an end-to-end traceability. We've got growers using the system, and it resolves a lot of, again, the pricing power for the grower questions, but also some of the regulatory compliance as well. So I can say their name now. They are crops.
Nice.
This one's a pretty new use case. We've just partnered really in the beginning of the summer with these folks. But as I mentioned, starting to have more of a strategic emphasis in the healthcare sector. Other than Bayer, who of course has healthcare divisions that we do some stuff with, we've partnered with a company called Alton, which is a very large French system integrator and R&D outsourcing firm. And they have created a clinical trial solution on our platform, and they've actually landed a customer called ClinLogix. So the way that clinical trials work, to my limited understanding, basically, is that the trials are financed by the big pharmaceutical manufacturers, the Bayer, Pfizer, all that sort of thing. They run in multiple phases, and the actual operations of the clinical trial outsourced to CROs, contract research organizations. Excuse me. So the CROs, again, they're working with the hospital, they're working with the doctors and the actual participants in the trial, and they end up managing lots and lots of data and copies of the same data. And so there's the versioning of it is actually pretty difficult to deal with, and especially as you're dealing with data that's very sensitive, needs to be encrypted, only needs to be kind of shared by multiple parties, but only partially visible, and goes through many versions, and in which the integrity of that data is extremely important. So a clinical trial, if the data has been altered by accident or for any reason, it pretty much invalidates the whole trial. And so when you're talking about, by phase 3 of the clinical trial, a $10 billion investment from a big manufacturer, they really want to know that it's been correct kind of all the way through, and that the endpoints of the trial, which is the process that they're focused on, are correct, basically. So this is a pretty cool use case. It's again, there is actually an end customer using it at this point, which is very exciting. But it's also an example of our partner-driven model, right? So we didn't create a team to go after clinical trials. The partner approached us. We're providing kind of the back-end blockchain solution. They're focused on the business solution layer. So another one, I think I talked briefly about this last year. So basically, we are powering a consortium in the travel sector, and it's focused on the corporate travel booking use case, if you will. And the interesting thing, we've learned a lot about this market over the last couple of years. We've been working on this. It's a very antiquated technology. So most big corporates, they use a travel agency. That travel agency will book travel on their behalf, usually using a booking tool like SAP Concur, and then it'll talk to what's called a global distribution system. So the first global distribution system was created by American Airlines in like the 60s, and a very lucky IBM salesperson was sitting in first class on American, met the president of American, who mused, like, wouldn't it be great if there was an automated system so that agents could book travel and see what the plane is doing in real time, rather than having to deal with a lot of paper, essentially sending faxes at best back and forth. And so American actually went and built this technology, and it ended up creating a company called Sabre, and eventually it spun Sabre out. And it turns out that distributing the inventory of the seats is a much more profitable business than actually serving the flights. And so Sabre's net margins are in the kind of 30% range, in American 10 to 15, et cetera. And the airlines do not love distribution, and ultimately they often feel more comfortable if they had a direct relationship with the customer. So The GDSs are a fairly classic intermediary, as I mentioned before, that potentially whose role could be disrupted or smoothed or whatever you want to think about it by using blockchain technology. So in this example, we're looking with an extremely large purchaser of travel, United Airlines, and the Airline Reporting Corporation, which is kind of an industry owned by the airline's body that provides the settlement backend for a lot of the current cash movement in the travel sector. And so it's a pretty exciting space. Corporate travel is enormous, very impactful, everyone does it. And we're working on kind of a new path. And again, this is a partner-driven example. So the company BlockSky is a software company that has built this solution on top of our platform. We're kind of heavily involved in the operations of the project, making sure the blockchain works, the smart contracts are designed correctly, etc. But again, is illustrative of our model where, again, a lot of the industry expertise is coming from partners. So I think I'm right on time. So
Perfect. Great job. Great job.
Kieren, don't walk off yet. I need you to stay on stage for just a couple more minutes here. Just give me a second here. Don't go off yet. All right. So everyone, you know that the Global Blockchain Summit has always been focused on the enterprise. And what I felt this year was that BlockApps and Kieren James-Lubin has really been driving the enterprise strategy for Ethereum and doing great development work with Bear Crop Sciences. I actually got a chance to see that and talk with the people that are involved in that project, and they were very impressed with the work that BlockApps has done. And I also say, Kieren, you've done such a great job with getting Enterprise Ethereum Alliance going, and just all the hard work that you put into making sure that the enterprise is really a talked about part of blockchain. So we have a little recognition here for you. And so there you go, Kieren. And so this year, we're kicking off the first Innovator of the Year Award. And this is something that we plan to do going forward, but definitely. This is a very well-deserved award, Kieren, and thank you for all the work and dedication that you've done in the enterprise space. We love it. And just like he was talking about, just last year when he came out to the summit, we were, not able to talk about Bear Crop Sciences. Now it's a great project, full production, really a great deal. So thank you very much, Kieren. Appreciate it. Okay, everyone, I think we know what time it is now. It's time to wrap up for the day. We have a great cocktail reception for you and some food. And then that's sponsored by Perkins Coie. If you haven't got a chance to talk with the Perkins Coie team, definitely do so. Great law firm. You can talk to Global Women in Blockchain, talk to Zua, see how they're doing with their project that we're testing here. And did everyone have a great time at the event on day one here? Learning a lot, getting all up to speed as far as the latest in blockchain innovation around the enterprise. So I'll let Hans say a few words about this as well.
Just a couple quick words. So first of all, before you run away, I'm the guy keeping you from your drinks. So remember, don't blame anybody else. It's me. Real quick, how many people here think that they know someone who's ever died? Right. How many people think that they're not going to die? Pretty. Let me switch mics. Pretty much one thing we all have in common is we're all going to die. I mean, I don't want to get morbid, but statively, if you guys missed that presentation, see those two guys over there? It's Ari and Alexander. Go talk to them, because it's probably one of the best use cases you'll ever find. It's awesome. Also, if you missed the CSU presentation, Joe Gersh is over there, you can wave. And he's got, Sean, please stand up for a second. Amazing presentation, you're gonna love it. Track that guy down over drinks and talk to him, because you just have to chat with him. He's awesome. Okay, also, Gerard had a quick special offer. Take 2 seconds, it's I guess a code, right?
So I'm going to try to do this within 90 seconds. So you learned a lot. You obviously want to capitalize on this, get some revenue in. So we got a couple options for you. The Government Blockchain Association, we're doing a couple things this year. Number one, we're putting out a directory of production-ready systems, right, that folks have. We're sending it. We've got about 15,000 people in GBA. We've got to reach out to about 100,000 people. So if you have a production-ready system that you'd like to be listed in our directory, we're launching the Future of Money Governance Law directory with production-ready systems. Please let me know. Also, if you're interested in joining the GBA and joining work groups this year, we're getting funding for our different working group projects. We've got about 50 projects. We're looking at getting funding for voting, healthcare, identity management, a whole variety of different use cases. And our focus is really doing studies, right? Because a lot of these problems are somewhat complex. So we're doing studies. If you want to be part of that, you want to be on the team to get revenue, to be early on the grant phase, so that you can then go into the implementation phase. Please let me know. If you'd like to join the GBA, there's a discount code available until Monday. It's GBS, right? Global Blockchain Summit. GBS 19. It's 20% off GBA membership, any level of membership. Thank you very much.
No worries. That's great. All right, I know I'm going to have some drinks and network, and I recommend you guys to the same. John, anything else?
Make sure you try the crypto cocktail. So Kryptonite is a new cocktail we got for you. Try it.
Just for the show.
Yeah. Have a great one. See you tomorrow as well.
All right. So your thing is